Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at a sunny, carefree summer staple and turning it completely upside down. I mean, we all know the feeling of a crowded amusement park, right? The smell of sunscreen, the sound of splashing water, the constant whistles of the lifeguards. It feels like a perfectly controlled, totally safe environment. But today, we're going to examine three deeply chilling, documented accounts from water parks that absolutely shatter that illusion. We'll break down the mechanics of a locked room mystery inside a water slide, dissect the terrifying methodology of a human predator, and finally, look at a deeply unsettling encounter in a crowded wave pool. Let's get started. So, what happens when the safest place for summer fun actually hides the deadliest secrets? We construct all these heavy layers of security, gates, badges, staff rotations, cameras, all to make us feel safe. But as we're about to see, that security is often just a fragile illusion. Our first case study demonstrates exactly how quickly that illusion can fall apart, leaving behind a mystery that just completely defies all physical logic. Section 1. The Pelican Plunge Mystery. Our first account brings us to Tampa, Florida, to a near-vertical, pitch-black water slide known as the Pelican Plunge. Now, once you enter this tube, you're essentially in a high-speed freefall in the dark. It's supposed to be a thrilling but really quick adrenaline rush. So a young woman named Sarah enters the tube. A normal ride takes a maximum of 15 seconds. Just 15 seconds. But look at how the panic escalates here. 1 minute passes, her friends waiting at the bottom start to freak out, and the lifeguard radios up to the top to confirm she actually went in, and she did. The water is immediately shut off. 10 minutes in, a maintenance worker actually crawls up the slide against the flow with a headlamp. He finds absolutely nothing. After an entire hour of frantic searching and reviewing security footage, which clearly shows her entering but never exiting, the staff decide they have to run a physical test. And this brings us to a deeply disturbing moment. A young staff member volunteers to test the slide. He goes in. 15 seconds later, he comes shooting out into the pool, gasping for air and physically shaking. He claims he hit something halfway down, something soft, like flesh. They immediately shut it down again, send 3 workers with flashlights to check every single inch of that tube, and 30 minutes later, it is completely empty. And here is where the logic just completely breaks down. By dusk, they finally found Sarah. She was dead. But she wasn't in the slide. She was found at the bottom of a pool that was entirely disconnected from the Pelican Plunge. Paramedics estimated she'd been dead for at least an hour. So the absolutely crucial question here is, how is this physically possible? How did she enter a closed tube, fail to exit the single opening, yet end up drowned at the bottom of a totally unrelated pool? It's literally a locked room mystery right out in the open. Well, the final piece of evidence only deepens the horror. Later that night, Sarah's friends reviewed the casual videos they'd been taking on their phones. In a video filmed near the slide's exit right after Sarah went in, they turned the volume all the way up. What they heard was faint but undeniable, muffled banging against the inside walls of the slide, and Sarah's voice desperately screaming for help. She was trapped and she was terrified, in a slide that multiple maintenance workers swore was perfectly clear. The park permanently condemned the ride, citing a vague equipment malfunction. But honestly, no mechanical failure explains how she bypassed that exit. Section 2. The Imposter Lifeguard. For our second account, we're moving away from unexplained mysteries to a very grounded, true crime narrative we head to the Mission Bay Aquatic Park in San Diego, as recounted by a 19-year-old administrative employee. And this brilliantly illustrates a complete breakdown in protocol and how a predator can manipulate the blind trust we put in uniforms. Real lifeguards at this park followed a strict structure, crisp uniforms, rotating stations every single hour. But this 19-year-old employee noticed an anomaly at the lazy river, a man in a faded, outdated uniform who never rotated. Worse, his behavior was entirely predatory. While real lifeguards watched the water, this imposter was pulling young kids aside for quote-unquote safety checks, literally going through their pockets and asking where their parents were. Thankfully, the employee's instincts kicked in. She went straight to her supervisor and described the man. Late 40s, squinty eyes, faded uniform. The supervisor checked the staff roster and gave a chilling response. Nobody like that works here. When they rushed back out to the lazy river to confront him, the man had completely vanished into the crowd. Now, this wasn't just some opportunistic crime, it was highly calculated. Police later uncovered his exact methodology. First, he mapped out various water parks in the region. Second, he fabricated exact replica staff badges and acquired old uniforms. Third, he deliberately targeted these parks during peak crowded hours, using the chaos of the environment to blend in perfectly. He was finally caught because that same observant employee spotted him later that day near a restricted, staff-only maintenance gate. He was actually trying to lure a 7-year-old girl into the tunnels by claiming her parents were waiting inside. The employee intervened, blocked him, and called security. When guards detained him and searched his bag, the evidence was horrifying. Candy to lure children, extra clothes for a quick getaway, and fake staff badges. He'd been doing this for weeks across multiple parks. It is a really stark reminder that predators hide in plain sight, weaponizing our trust in authority figures against us. Section 3. The Wave Pool Entity. Our final account takes place at a packed local wave pool right at the end of summer break. A group of friends are just trying to enjoy one last weekend before heading off to college, but they encounter something that completely defies natural explanation. The narrator and his friends noticed a man standing in the deep end of the wave pool, dead still like a statue, just staring off into space, while everyone around him was laughing and splashing. You know, our human brains always try to rationalize the bizarre, right? So his friend David suggested the man was just doing endurance testing, pushing his physical limits by holding his breath or standing completely rigid. It was a comforting thought, a way to make a really unsettling sight seem somewhat normal. But that rationalization crumbled the second the waves stopped. The narrator dove underwater to check on the man, and through the murky, chlorinated water, he didn't see the man standing. He saw him lying completely flat on the pool floor, arms at his sides, eyes wide open, staring right back up at him. The narrator surfaced in a total panic, only for his friends to point out that the man was still standing upright right where he'd been. Like, what? Moments later, the lifeguards blew their whistles and cleared the pool. As they were getting out, the narrator overheard this frantic chatter between the guards. "Didn't we pull a body from here last week?" "Yeah, a dude drowned." About 10 minutes later, the lifeguards called it a false alarm and let the guests back in. The narrator stayed in the shallow end, thinking he was safe. But as the massive wave swell started up again, lifting the crowd up and down, he felt something impossible. Ice-cold fingers clamped hard around his ankles, and with a massive tug, he was yanked violently underwater. What followed was a frantic, terrifying fight for survival. Underwater, the narrator was face to face with a man, but up close, the entity had pale, bloated, gray skin, waterlogged like a drowned corpse. Its eyes were milky white, its jaw slacked open. The narrator was clawing at hands that felt cold and slimy, absolutely desperate for air as his lungs burned. The entity was actively dragging him deeper toward the bottom of the pool. Running out of air, the narrator violently kicked the entity in the nose and the chest, finally breaking that vice-like grip and shooting up to the surface. He scrambled out of the pool, coughing up water. When he looked back, the deep end was completely empty. The park drained the wave pool that night and found absolutely nothing. But the narrator didn't need them to find a body, because he had physical proof. Glaring back at him on his ankle were deep, dark purple marks in the exact shape of fingers. Section 4. What lies beneath? So what do these 3 distinct accounts really tell us? They systematically dismantle the comforting illusion of safety we construct in these heavily guarded, controlled environments. Whether it's an impossible, physics-defying tragedy inside a sealed tube, a calculated predator weaponizing a uniform, or an unexplainable entity lurking beneath the artificial waves, the message is pretty clear. Our perceived safety is just that, a perception. We surround ourselves with lifeguards, whistles, and bright colors to distract from how vulnerable we really are. These stories remind us to stay vigilant and to always trust our instincts when something feels wrong. So the next time you visit an amusement park, the next time you hear a splash, will you wonder what is waiting for you in the water? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious out there.